Central Park is one of the most iconic places in New York City. It's where millions of people walk, relax, take photos, and enjoy nature. But beneath the grass, trees, and walking paths lies a buried history, one that's rarely mentioned on tours or in school textbooks. Before Central Park existed, this land was home to a real neighborhood. It had houses, churches, and schools, and most of the people who lived there were free Black Americans. It was called Seneca Village. And in the mid-1800s, it was one of the few places where Black families could own property, vote, and build a safe, stable life. But the city had other plans. Officials used laws and media spin to push people out, demolish their homes, and erase the village from the map. Today, most people have never even heard of it. This is the forgotten story of Seneca Village. By the 1850s, it had about 225 residents, 2/3 of them Black, and the rest mostly Irish and German immigrants. There were roughly 30 houses, 3 churches, 2 schools, and even a burial ground. It was quiet, peaceful, and largely self-sustaining. Many residents were skilled laborers, shoemakers, carpenters, gardeners. Others worked as domestic staff in wealthier parts of the city. Most were poor or working class, but they had built something meaningful, a safe space where families could grow, worship, and learn. Religion played a big role. Churches weren't just spiritual centers. They were meeting places, schools, and the heart of the village's identity. The African Union Church and the African Methodist Episcopal Zion Church helped organize daily life and support their members. Education mattered, too. At a time when many Black children were denied access to school, Seneca Village had its own school for Black students. That alone made it extraordinary. And there was something else that made Seneca Village special: community pride. Residents built their homes by hand, kept gardens, and held tight to what they had. Even with limited resources, they created a village full of life and purpose. It's important to understand how rare this was. In the 1850s, most Black New Yorkers lived in overcrowded tenements downtown, surrounded by violence and discrimination. Seneca Village offered a different path, one of land ownership, fresh air, and relative safety. Some newspapers at the time dismissed the village as a shanty town. That couldn't be further from the truth. While not wealthy, Seneca Village was organized, stable, and deeply rooted in family and faith. But as New York City's vision for the future expanded, especially with plans to create a massive park uptown, the peaceful life of Seneca Village would soon come under threat. In the early 1850s, city leaders had a dream: a grand public park in the middle of Manhattan, something to rival the great parks of Europe. They argued that New Yorkers, especially the rich, needed a green escape from the noise and chaos of the city. That dream would become Central Park. But there was a problem. The land they wanted wasn't empty. It was home to hundreds of people, including the families of Seneca Village. Rather than look elsewhere, the city decided to remove them, and they had a legal tool to do it: eminent domain, a law that allows the government to take private land for public use as long as they pay for it. In 1853, the New York State Legislature approved the creation of Central Park. The city quickly began the process of clearing out the land. Over 1,600 people would be forced out, not just from Seneca Village, but also from other small communities in the area. The city's newspapers, backed by wealthy interests, played their part too. They published articles calling the people in Seneca Village squatters, vagrants, and ignorant. They painted the village as dirty and chaotic, nothing like the organized, peaceful community it truly was. These stories weren't just cruel, they were strategic. By spreading lies about the village, officials made it easier to justify its destruction. If people believed the land was worthless, no one would care when it was cleared. Residents fought back. Some refused to leave. Others went to court, trying to hold on to the homes they had worked so hard to build. But the city pushed forward anyway. By 1857, it was over. Homes were bulldozed, churches torn down. The school was gone. The cemetery was destroyed, and the graves were never relocated properly. Everything that made up Seneca Village, its history, culture, and spirit, was wiped from the landscape. No monuments were built, no signs were put up. It was as if the community had never existed. And for more than 100 years, that's exactly how the city wanted it. After the final homes were destroyed, Seneca Village disappeared, physically and historically. Central Park was built, and over time, New Yorkers walked, jogged, and picnicked over the very land where families once lived and thrived. There were no plaques, no markers. The story of Seneca Village was buried under lawns, playgrounds, and jogging paths. For over a century, almost no one talked about it. It wasn't until the 1990s that researchers and activists began piecing the story back together. Historians like Cynthia Copeland and institutions like the New York Historical Society began digging into old land records, church documents, and census data. What they found was shocking. Not just that the village had existed, but that it had been thriving. In 2011, an archaeological dig was launched by the Central Park Conservancy and the Institute for the Exploration of Seneca Village History. Carefully, researchers uncovered foundations, tools, pottery shards, and other everyday items, proof that this wasn't a slum or shanty town. It was a real neighborhood, full of real people with real lives. One of the most moving discoveries was a child's shoe, preserved in the soil. It was a quiet, personal reminder that the people of Seneca Village weren't just names on paper. They were families, parents, children, people with futures that were stolen. Since then, efforts have been made to bring Seneca Village back into public memory. In 2019, a series of signs and educational markers were placed in Central Park for the first time, near West 85th Street, telling visitors about the community that once stood there. But even now, many people still don't know the story, and that's no accident. The erasure of Seneca Village wasn't just physical, it was historical. It's part of a larger pattern in American history, where Black success is quietly removed or rewritten. Whether it's thriving towns like Greenwood in Tulsa or neighborhoods like Seneca Village, these stories challenge the myth that Black communities can't build, grow, and prosper. That's why remembering Seneca Village matters. It's not just about correcting the record, it's about honoring the people who dared to build something better, even when the world was against them. Their story didn't end in 1857. It was just hidden. Today, Central Park is one of the most visited places in the world, but beneath the beauty and calm lies a history that can't be ignored. Seneca Village was more than just land. It was a symbol of freedom, progress, and hope for Black families in a hostile world. It was taken, erased, and forgotten, but not forever. Now, as the story resurfaces, we're reminded that history isn't just about what's remembered. It's also about what's been hidden and who gets to decide. Seneca Village deserves more than a footnote. It deserves to be known, named, and never erased again. Liked this video? Wait until you see what's coming. Subscribe to my channel to be part of all the dark history about to come to light.